Ms. Kim Davis, hi, I'm Lauren Nile, and this is my video letter to you. Ms. Davis, you have stated that you could not indeed issue marriage licenses to same-sex couples because it violates your religious belief, and therefore it violates your conscience. Well, I'd like to address that issue. Before doing so, though, in the spirit of full disclosure, let me be sure to tell you that I am a member of the LGBT community and that my wife and I have been married for 7 years. We've been happily together for 13 years. So that's just in the interest of full disclosure. So I'd like to address the legality of your actions, or what I consider to be the legality of your actions, and also I'd like to address the remarks that many people have made, the feelings that many people have expressed, that your actions are hypocritical, which I say with respect. First, the legalities. Again, in the spirit of full disclosure, I'm a lawyer, and I also served as director of the Office of the Office of Equity and Diversity for a major university for a couple of years. And so I have some knowledge of and some experience with this whole issue of religion and religion in the workplace, religious freedom in the workplace, and accommodating religious freedom in the workplace. It was my job to do so. So before doing that, though, and getting into a few of the weeds of the legalities, let me say that I really admire people who live by their conscience, Ms. Davis. I really do. I do workshops and seminars for a living, and one of the things that I speak about very, very often in my seminars is the need for all of us, all human beings, to live a life of conscience and integrity, to live a life of intention. So if you say that you are indeed living by your conscience and not providing marriage licenses to same-sex couples and other couples as well, who am I to judge? I can't. I mean, when the Quakers helped African Americans flee slavery, they were living by their conscience. I'm glad they did that. During the Civil Rights Movement, when civil rights activists intentionally disobeyed the segregation laws, the Jim Crow laws of the southern states, they were doing that as a matter of conscience, and I'm so glad that they did that. You know, during the Vietnam War, if women had been drafted, and if I had been drafted, if I were old enough to serve, I may not have done so. My older brother served. He fought in the jungles of Vietnam for 13 months. I might not have, though, I strongly suspect, as a matter of conscience, because I was opposed to the war. So yes, living one's life as a matter of conscience is something that I applaud, admire, and think we need more of. Having said that, what you're doing, Ms. Davis, doesn't feel like a matter of conscience to me. It feels very different to me and to many others. And the reason is that if you didn't want to issue marriage licenses rather, to same-sex couples, then all you needed to do was request a religious accommodation from your employer. And as far as I know, and all the reading that I've done in this case, you didn't do that. I mean, look, the law, it is the law that requires religious freedom and religious accommodation and freedom from religious discrimination. Here, I'll share with you. This is from the EEOC, the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, the agency that's responsible for enforcing Title VII of the Civil Rights Act, which prohibits discrimination based on religion. This is from their website, the EEOC's website. It says, Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 prohibits employment discrimination based on religion. This includes refusing to accommodate an employee's sincerely held religious beliefs or practices. A religious practice may be sincerely held by an individual, even if it is newly adopted by that individual, or even if it isn't consistently observed by that individual, or even if that person's belief is different from the commonly followed tenets of the individual's religion. So you see, the government, I think, legislatively, has done a very comprehensive job of trying to ensure that people are not discriminated against based on religion. Now, if you go to the U.S. Department of Labor's Civil Rights Center Internal Statutes and Regulations on Religion site, it reads as follows. An employee or applicant must make the agency aware of the need for an accommodation based on a conflict between the individual's religious belief or practice and their work duties. Examples of religious accommodations may include schedule changes, arrivals, departures, floating optional holidays, flexible work breaks, and other scheduling changes, voluntary and shift substitutions and/or swaps, job reassignments such as changes of position, changes of tasks, and lateral transfers, modifications to workplace practices, policies, and procedures. An accommodation may also involve designating an unused or private location in the workplace where a religious observance or practice can occur. And it goes on to give numerous other examples of accommodations that employers must provide to their employees. So if it was against your conscience as an individual to issue marriage licenses to same-sex couples, if you had just asked for a religious accommodation from your employer, the government, the very entity that requires religious accommodation, the very entity that prohibits discrimination based on religion, if you had simply gone to your employer and said, I can't do this, issuing marriage licenses to same-sex couples violates my religious beliefs, and therefore it violates my conscience, and so I can't do it, your employer would have had to have accommodated you in some way. They would have engaged in what's called the interactive process, that's HR lingo, and they would have accommodated you in some way. But to my knowledge, based on everything I've read about this case and your actions, that was not done. Instead, what you chose to do, Ms. Davis, was make a spectacle of this thing, of this whole issue, by saying, yes, taxpayers pay my salary, but I don't care. I'm not doing it. Yes, I know that I'm required by law to do this because the highest court of the land says that I must, but I don't want to do this. Yes, I understand that this is a critical element of my job, but I'm not doing it. Let me tell my supervisor in the last job that I had that I didn't want to do some critical element of my job. Let's see how long I would have kept my job. So, you see, that's the rub, Miss Davis. That's the rub. Not that you're trying to live according to your conscience, but that there was an easy legal way around this provided to you by your government, your employer, such that you personally would not have had to issue the licenses. And none of this would have happened. All of those same-sex couples that wanted to get married for months would have gotten married without you having been involved at all. But instead, you chose to just be defiant. And that's the rub, legally. To add insult to injury, reports have it that you're now even questioning the legitimacy of the marriages that were issued in your absence. In other words, the clerks in your office, the other clerks who gave same-sex couples their marriage licenses, I understand that you're now saying that those marriages aren't legitimate because they don't have your signature. Well, you see, this is one of the reasons, I should say, why people feel that this isn't just a matter of conscience for you, because those licenses were issued without you. This is part of the reason why it feels like you just don't want to do it. And doggone, you're going to show us that you're not going to do it. So, you know, if you can understand this, I mean, that's legally why this issue just doesn't cut the mustard. It doesn't pass the smell test in terms of what you've done. So, taking my lawyer's hat off now, I just want to address real quickly why I believe some people, many people indeed, have expressed their opinion that your actions feel hypocritical to them. And I must say, I feel that there's some legitimacy to that feeling. And the reason, Ms. Davis, is that many people who make public objection to some prohibition in the Bible, or purported prohibition in the Bible, seem to be cherry-picking those prohibitions that they're going to object to. For example, I'm going to give you 3 examples, actually, and they're all from the King James Version of the Bible, the version of the Bible that I grew up with. The King James Version, Leviticus 3:17. It shall be a perpetual statute for your generations throughout all your dwellings, that ye shall neither eat fat nor blood. Now, Miss Davis, if you drink milk, if you eat eggs, you're consuming fat. If you've ever had a rare steak, you're eating blood. Maybe you don't engage in any of those behaviors, but the point is that there are so many prohibitions in the Bible that none of us live consistently by. So to cherry pick those that we want to make a big public deal out of just seems disingenuous. Here's number 2, Leviticus 19:19. Again, the King James Version of the Bible. Ye shall keep my statutes. Thou shalt not let thy cattle gender with a diverse kind. Thou shalt not sow thy field with mingled seed. Neither shall a garment mingled of linen and wool come upon thee. Well, unless you check every garment, unless you check the fabric of every piece of clothing that you buy for your wardrobe, my guess is that you've probably worn some garment that has a mixture of linen and wool, as so many garments do. Third and finally, Corinthians 14:35. It says, in part, it is a shame for women to speak in the church. Corinthians 14:35. It is a shame for women to speak in the church. Have you ever spoken in your church, Miss Davis? My guess is that you probably have. And yet, doing so is a clear violation of Corinthians 14:35. So you see, when people say that what you're doing feels hypocritical, speaking for only myself and perhaps other people who share my opinion, I can say that it feels that way because when people so often choose to make a public spectacle of some chapter and verse of the Bible, which they say that they hold dearly, it's because they've cherry-picked that particular chapter, that particular verse, ignoring many, many others that are in the same Bible. So that's my letter to you, Miss Davis. I am glad you're out of jail. No one wanted you to go to jail. But I do hope that following your conscience, you not stand in the way of the other clerks in your office who want to do what they believe the Constitution and the law of this land requires them to do. And that is to treat all citizens equally with regard to marriage, to engage in marriage equality, and to issue licenses to everyone who applies. Thanks.